Hey everyone, welcome to PolitiFest 2020. I'm Mackenzie Elmer. I'm Voice of San Diego's environment reporter. And if you don't know about us, Voice of San Diego is a nonprofit investigative news organization committed to holding public officials accountable and giving you, the public, the tools you need to be advocates for the public good. As a nonprofit, we depend on members and donors like you to make our work possible. So thank you very much for your support. Before we start, I would like to recognize some of our sponsors. The Google News Initiative for supporting the creation of this virtual event, the College of Arts and Sciences at USD for underwriting all student tickets, the San Diego Foundation for supporting our community conversations. Also, thank you to Cox Communications, SDG&E, the Atlantis Group, the City of San Diego Retired Employees Association, City Heights Community Development Corporation, the San Diego County Democratic Party, and Business for Good. If you don't know already, PolitiFest runs through noon on Saturday, October 3rd. You can check out the schedule at politifest.org. There's a ton of events coming up, and there's several sessions are for free throughout the event, as well as there are some sessions in both English and in Spanish. So just check for a translator on the event. Recordings of all the sessions will be available on our website by noon the next day. Questions for our panelists can go into the chat box below this video, and if you're not already logged in on YouTube, it's very easy to do so using your Gmail account. I also welcome you to tweet along with the session and share your experience by using hashtag PolitiFest2020 on social media. Our moderator tonight is Andrew Bowen. He's a reporter from KPBS who covers housing, transportation, and cars blocking sidewalks, according to his Twitter bio. So welcome, Andrew, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie. And I have the pleasure of introducing our two guests. But before I do that, I want to give everyone kind of an overview of what Measure E is and a bit of the background. So Measure E is an amendment to the city charter to exempt the Midway district from San Diego's 30-foot coastal height limit. This goes back to 1972 when a large majority of the city's voters approved Prop D, and that established a 30-foot height limit on all new construction in the city's neighborhoods west of Interstate 5. There are a few exceptions already. The charter exempts downtown from the height limit, land owned by the state or federal governments. For example, that's why UCSD is allowed to build taller than 30 feet. And in 1998, a very slim majority of city voters agreed to exempt SeaWorld from the height limit, and that's what allowed them to build roller coasters taller than 30 feet. But Measure E would be far and away the largest change to the height limit since it was established in 1972. And changing the coastal height limit is often called the third rail of San Diego politics, but it looks like that may be changing. Measure E has lined up a lot of institutional support. It's been endorsed by Mayor Kevin Faulkner, Councilmember Jen Campbell, who represents the Midway District, as well as the Midway Pacific Highway Community Planning Group, and both the Democratic and Republican parties of San Diego County. But don't think that this is a done deal. There is a campaign going on, and people will be arguing about this this evening. So I'm first going to introduce Dike Anyiwo. He's arguing he's going to be speaking on behalf of the Yes on E campaign. Dike is a public policy advisor for the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce. He lives in the Midway District, and he's the vice chair of the Midway Pacific Highway Community Planning Group. I've just been informed that our No on E spokesperson, John McNab, is coming. We were having some technical difficulties getting him into the meeting, but hopefully that'll be resolved soon. John is a longtime San Diego activist, and he's president of Save Our Access. That's a nonprofit group that is suing the city of San Diego over Measure E, arguing that it should have been, that the city should have prepared an environmental impact report on the impacts of Measure E before sending it to the city's voters. So given that it's just you and me, Dike, right now, I'll start with you. And this is probably the simplest question that you'll get all evening, which is, why should voters vote yes on Measure E?
Yeah, good evening, and thanks for having me, Voice of San Diego and Andrew. This is always an honor and a privilege to be involved with this fantastic organization. Regarding Measure E, like you said, I live in the community. I serve as the vice chair of the community planning group. I'm also the co-chair of the actual ballot measure campaign in the yes direction. And so when we speak about Measure E, we have to figure out and also factor in all of these different components. The real reason that we need to vote yes on E is that the community plan update, which is a document that basically governs the zoning for any given district, was passed for this area, this community planning area in 2018. And in that document, some of the big changes from the previous version to this current version include a dramatic reallocation of housing density, particularly of the affordable variety. The challenge that we have, though, in the 2 years since Measure E, since the community plan update was passed, is that we've not seen any new housing units come on board. There was one project that was underway at the time that this community planning document was updated, but since then we've not seen that construction or that development. And realistically, the reason is that we had this artificial constraint that was voted in 1972 by the people of San Diego of that day that prohibits new construction to only 30 feet. So the challenge that we have with regarding Measure E is this constraint, as I said. What we're really looking to do is free ourselves from this limit and develop the community as we see fit, according to this community planning document, which was approved by the City of San Diego, the City Council, by the Coastal Commission in 2019. We have all the approvals, we just need the incentive, and that's really the issue that we have here today.
It's a shame John, welcome.
Thank you, I'm sorry, it's just, as soon as 6 o'clock hit, it dumped.
Well,
I never had a freeze on my computer like that.
We're glad to have you here, and your timing could not have been better, actually, because I just asked Dike why people should vote for Measure E, and my next question to you is, why should people vote no on Measure E?
Well, what we have in the sports arena area is some of the most prime property in San Diego, and what makes it so prime is it's the link between two bays. It is the opportunity to use property that is unlike any other in the city to create a destination sports and recreation area to address one of the biggest issues we have in San Diego, which is we're exploding population and we're getting rid of beach access and coast access by filling in beach parking lots, by converting schoolyards to multi-million-dollar condos. And in the case of this particular property, we have over 600 acres of public land, around 669 acres there. That is now the target for leaving the public domain forever for housing. But the housing that is being targeted is basically what you have in downtown San Diego along their waterfront, the Bosa development, which would be $1.5 million condos for foreign investors. So we're not going to be addressing the affordable housing crisis because the way the city has watered down all the rules, instead what we're going to do is have Hong Kong style densification in the area and disappearing our public lands. What's really prime about this is when you're dealing with the weather, you can't get any better weather for outdoor sports and recreation, which is our calling card, than the sports arena area. Once that's gone, we can't link the bays. Linking the bays with a bike trail or a little concrete sidewalk is not linking the bays. If we preserve the amount of public land that we have down there, we can create a 200+ acre water trail park, one that would allow you to get to that area on the trolley, walk a couple hundred feet and jump in a kayak and be able to go down in the San Diego Bay or to go kayak up to the sports arena area and then walk over to Mission Bay Park. That's what's so exciting about it.
Let me jump in here. So it sounds like what you're talking about would be a city-owned infrastructure project. So taxpayers would be creating this new park or parkland and connecting the two bays. The that would potentially, well, it would definitely cost a lot of taxpayer money. And at a time when San Diego is experiencing an extraordinary deficit in its budget, it already has billions of dollars in unfunded infrastructure needs. Why is it the smarter decision to have the city pay for this rather than allowing private developers to partner with the city to develop the city-owned land and get some increased revenue for the city in the form of lease payments?
Well, the definition of sustainable development is to look 5 generations into the future and make sure that what you do today does not degrade the quality of life for people in the future. What you have is multiple ways of being able to pay for a great park in that area, as well as saving MCRD, which has now been put on the chopping block. So money has always been the thing that they say we don't have. When back in Naval Training Center days, we didn't have $20 million to preserve the base, which was $20 million over 7 years to maintain it. So that big bugaboo is always put out. Now, another issue is, why are we fire selling our entire quality of life for a financial crisis? And why are we catering to foreign interests on all these developments? Can
you explain what you mean by foreign interests?
Well, if you're dealing with the hotels down in next to Navy Broadway on the Lane Field site, those were paid by China, and China has partnered with Hyatt, which those are, to create hotels for foreign visitors to come and stay on our public land. See, this is public land. We're not talking about, I'm not saying anything about private land. I'm saying that this area is mostly public land. And it's a monstrous opportunity to do the right thing, which is create a vast green belt that everybody could be proud of. In the last 25 years that I've been down here, there has been zero infrastructure, park infrastructure of any meaningful type outside of pocket parks, which really isn't anything to do with destination, in the city of San Diego. And at the same time, it's been hundreds and hundreds of prime public land that we own has left the public domain and gone into private development.
John, I want to give Dike a chance to jump in here. So Dike, do you want to first of all respond to some of John's comments? A big park in the Midway district sounds like something pretty nice. And also, why don't you tell us about what it's like for you as a Midway resident? What do you like about the neighborhood? What do you not like about the neighborhood? And how do you think Measure E would make it better?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to some of that. I think one thing that we want to be very clear about when we talk about the Midway District is exactly what it is that we're talking about. The Midway Community Planning Area is 1,324 acres at present, right? 400 of those acres, yes, as John said, consist of Marine Corps Recruiting Depot. Only 88 of those 1,324 acres are owned by the city of San Diego. 40 of those acres are currently under long-term lease at sites that host currently affordable housing for seniors. There are only 48 acres of city-owned land that are up in the air at the moment, and those are currently going to long-term RFP for the sports center redevelopment. So I don't know what sort of 200-acre park the city will manifest out of land that it doesn't have control over. Where else? Sorry, could you repeat the rest of your question, please, Andrew?
So tell us about what it's like to be a resident of the Midway District. What do you like about it, and what do you not like about it, and how do you think Measure E would make it better?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I've lived here for just about 6 years now, in the same house, in the same room. I love it quite a bit. You know, I feel as though I'm about 10 to 15 minutes away from downtown, from North Park, from Pacific Beach, from just about anywhere I'd like to go. If you actually sort of zoom out and get that bird's eye view, this area is directly related or correlated, situated in the heart of what I think is going to be the new part of downtown, right? Or excuse me, the new part of San Diego, the new heart of San Diego. The community area also includes the Navwan Site, which we're talking about redeveloping in some significant way with regard to transportation infrastructure. And
I'll just explain for anybody who's listening, the Navwan Site is owned by the Navy. It's a piece of land along Pacific Highway, I think it is. Between it's right by the trolley tracks. It's owned by the Navy, and the Navy wants to redevelopment in some sort of public-private partnership, also potentially including a new San Diego Grand Central Station. So yeah, please continue.
There you go. Yeah, so what I was saying is that we're central, right? We're central to jobs. We're in between downtown and UTC. We're central to transit. But what we really lack is residences. You know, the little complex that I live in here was built in 2007, 2008. But it's one of, I think, only 2 or 3 different residential developments in the area at the moment. There's just over 2,000 units physically on the ground now. The community plan update that we passed a couple of years ago, as I said, basically allows for an additional 10,000, almost 11,000 units, right? So I personally enjoy it. I feel as though I am in a position where I can walk to the grocery store, I can walk to the sports arena, I can walk to Bay City Brewing, which is my old stomping grounds back in the day when we used to do things like that. You know, I've stayed in the Midway area maybe a lot longer than I initially thought I would when I first moved here because of, like I said, that sort of central location. And we're also close enough to the coast where it stays tempered. You know, my parents live inland in the Inland Empire, planning on going home this weekend, and I know it's going to be 15 degrees hotter just, 60 or so miles from here. So there's a lot of things that I enjoy about living here in the Midway District. And, when I look at Measure E, and like I said, what I think the action, that the mechanism would really avail us of is the ability to densify, right? It's the ability to not just hit our unit cap of residential, our quota, if you will, but it's really the mechanism by which we have the ability to design how, right? Like I said, the community plan update has the ceiling on the number of housing units. There will be no more housing units than what is zoned for in the property or in the community planning area. What's interesting though is if you can only restrict the developments to 30 feet, what you wind up having is this flattening function, whereby instead of having open areas for parks, which we do desperately need it and want, you basically are constrained to having housing units on the ground and nowhere else. So I'm looking forward, like I said, to Measure E passing. I'm looking forward to having more neighbors. I'm looking forward to having some creativity and actual ability to design the types of units that make this community not just a destination for folks coming in, but make this destination and make this community something where folks want to move to and stay and live and work and play.
All right, I'm going to move over to John. So John, DK brought up the issue of extreme temperatures. So earlier this month, on September 5th in particular, it reached 118 degrees in El Cajon. The high temperature that day in Point Loma was 90 degrees. So as we start seeing more of these extreme heat events under climate change, and knowing that people living closer to the coast will be using less air conditioning, less energy, they're less likely to get heat-related illnesses, why should we be limiting the ability of the Midway District, to house more people?
Well, the other way of looking at it is the coast is a safety valve. When you take a look at San Diego, there has been less, people don't get as upset down here. In fact, there was a movie that Andy Warhol came to make in La Jolla, and he was trying to get people all mad at each other for a fight, and because what the coast has is a calming influence on people. It puts them into a different space. And when you're dealing with on September 5th, is the big issue is you got a ton of people that look to gain refuge at the coast. The coast is the place for all of us to go on those hot days. It's not for a bunch of people to have little tiny boxes stacked on top of each other, clogging up our public land. What we need is not to be in the crisis mode that we had this Labor Day, where at 8 o'clock all the parking lots were filled on the beach, and there wasn't any way to get there. If you create this River Trail Park, and it connects to the Old Town Trolley Station, which is entirely feasible, is that a lot of people from inland could get to the bays, both bays, and be in an immersion park experience that would greatly enhance the capacity of the coast to absorb these people who, again, as was said, want to enjoy the 15-degree temperature differential. And the other thing is, when you're dealing with redevelopment, classically in every civilization, the way that you get rid of blight or redevelop it is to create great parks. It's the signature of every great civilization are great parks. Now, if I was living in the Midway District, I got a chance of having this big old dense wall of high rises, or I had the chance of having a place that maybe have rises, because we're not even negotiating that, but had a great park. I'd go for the great park, because if you look like in San Francisco, everybody wants to live next to Golden Gate Park. I saw a guy that was on 6th Avenue. He says, the only reason I bought my unit was because it looked over Balboa Park. I could have had one looking over the ocean, but somebody's going to block it. So the property values go up significantly when you create public infrastructure that is good for everybody. And again, I'll come back to this point. The 669 acres down there is public land. 311 is streets.
I'm sorry, I have to ask, when you say 669 acres, are you including like the public right-of-way, like streets and roads that are not actually developable?
These were the numbers out of the plan. It was 669 acres is public land. 311 acres was public streets and right-of-ways. And then the rest was 344 acres is private land. So the biggest owner of land. And, we had a problem when we put our ballot argument that people were arguing that government land is not public land. Well, we as the taxpayers own this land. And that's the big issue is that we, the people, have not, the Midway community has weighed in, but the people of San Diego, because this is a destination facility for all of Southern California and for people from Arizona to beat the heat. We have a responsibility to everybody inland to make sure the capacity to serve these people who come on these brutal hot days that are increasing is there. And just to fill it with a whole bunch of homeowners doesn't make sense. The key point on this is that what we are asking to do is to give up air rights. Air rights is the ability to go over 30 feet. What that means to developers in pocket, in profits, is $2.5 billion to $5 billion that we're handing over to the 1%. And they're not giving anything in return. We're not only giving up the air rights for $2.5 to $5 billion, but we're also giving up our public land. So this is a lose-lose for the general public. Maybe a win-win for some people in the Midway area, but for the general public, it's a devastating loss.
DK, want to respond to any of that?
I would love to if I understood any of it. Frankly, I'm not sure what my counterpart here is referring to. What I can say specifically, though, about this Midway community is that there are no high-rises zoned or allocated for or desired in the Midway Community Plan. The Midway Community Plan calls specifically for as much affordable and market rate housing as possible for folks such as myself, young professionals, folks looking to start families, to get into the housing market. We're not looking for $1 million condos. Frankly, the closest $1 million property to where I live, where I'm sitting right now, is up the street in Paloma. There are several of those residences that are worth that much money. Where I am and in the Midway area, we have nothing like that. Regarding, like I said, some of what was said, I really don't know how to respond to most of that, other than I think that these numbers are somewhat inaccurate. I have the community plan in front of me. Like I said, it's the zone, the area itself is 1,324 acres, and only about 88 of those acres are owned by the city of San Diego. The county has some property. Obviously, the Navy and the federal government has some property, but there's no intent or way or possibility that I'm aware of whereby any of what my counterpart just here has articulated will come to pass.
I want to ask you, DK, about traffic. So, John brought up, that some people in Midway might like this, but people in Point Loma have to go through Midway in order to get home or to go to work. It's something of a pass-through area right now. And if developers are allowed to build taller than 30 feet, won't traffic get worse for everybody?
I don't see the direct correlation there. I think if you're talking about the existing traffic today, yeah, there are ingress and egress issues, particularly at peak times. What we used to know is sort of peak commute times, first thing in the morning and in the late afternoon, early evening. But I don't believe that there is sort of a direct cause and effect whereby as soon as a building gets built, there's more traffic, right? I want to also take a step back and be clear that what we're talking about with regards to removing Midway from this 30-foot height limit, the zoning that exists today essentially dictates what else could be built and the height to which anything could be built. When I say what else, I'm talking about residences versus commercial versus industrial, right? And then when I talk about the height, the dwelling units per acre sort of threshold that are set out there, we're not talking about anything taller than 100 feet. The highest possible building that is in the Midway area post Measure E would be 100 feet. And for, I guess, context, the existing sports arena is 77 feet. So we're talking about that site that is zoned to go up to 100 feet and a couple other sites around the area, around the community that will go up to that. The vast majority of the developable land in this area would go anywhere between 40 to 60 feet. So I would love to know what the definition of a high-rise is according to some of these folks, because I don't think that a 6-story building is a high-rise, but that's just my personal opinion.
John, I see you shaking your head there. So why don't you just go ahead and respond to what you were saying?
Well, let's just take a look at the Navwan Site, which is in the area, and that it was publicized a picture of a high-rise. And I counted the stories, and it was 30 stories high. So
So the Navwan, though, the Navwan site is owned by the federal government, and they're not subject to the 30-foot height limit right now. So I think what DK is talking about is all of the other land in the Midway district. Yeah, please go on.
Okay, hold on. When you go to the private development, then it is. And the public-private partnership was something that was created, my understanding, by Duncan Hunter in 1989 for Navy Broadway. And it was a way of circumventing the BRAC process and keeping the public out of the process. So when you
explain the BRAC process, what that means?
That's the base reuse and closure process. And so all of a sudden they found this little exciting thing that they could do is to circumvent the needs of the public by just partnering up with a government agency and saying, hey, we're just going to, well, you can have some of our land if you build us a building. And that was basically what Navwan is, they're saying there too. And the public really is left out of the review process. So once you change the ownership, which is what happened under this, is that the Navy would no longer, it would no longer be bound by Navy's exemption from the 30-foot height limit, because you would have housing developments there. So this whole thing about 100 feet is, you got to take it in the context of the other things that the city has done. Number one is that they just got rid of parking requirements. Number two is they're going after park requirements. The park requirement is 30%. And in the Midway area, they're planning on 2.5%. You also have anything within a half mile of a bus route, you can go however high you want. And as far as affordable housing, which started out saying, let's put a whole bunch of affordable housing, that act has been gutted so much that in these high rises, they could put one, maybe 5 units down on the bottom floors, and the rest are all market rate. And market rate in this area is 1.5 million average. That's what the towers downtown sell for. So it's a bill of goods to say.
John, I want to step in. So I want to step in and explain some of the things that you referred to for some people who probably aren't as clued into these issues. So when you refer to the parking requirements, this was a reform approved by the City Council a couple of years ago, allowing land zoned for multifamily housing, not single-family housing zoned land, but multifamily zoned land, allowing the developers to, rather than build a certain number of parking spaces per unit, to offer alternatives like free transit passes or subsidized transit passes, outdoor workout equipment, I think, was on the list of points that you could get. And so it applies also only to multifamily housing within a half mile of a major transit stop. And then I think you also mentioned, I think that was actually what I wanted to jump in and say, but I would like to move on to some other questions. So, John, when the original height limit was approved in 1972, the discussion was really about, as you've been talking about, allowing coastal access and preventing runaway development in the coastal zone, but it was also about views, coastal views. And the Midway District doesn't have any direct access to the coast. It's landlocked. It doesn't have any views of the coast. And supporters like Dike argue that it's not a coastal neighborhood. The boundary of the Interstate 5 freeway was arbitrary, and that Midway shouldn't be grouped into the same category as truly coastal neighborhoods like La Jolla or Point Loma. So why does Midway belong in the coastal zone?
Well, first of all, from the ocean to the Midway district is less mileage than from the far side of La Jolla to the ocean. Number two is this area has waterside access. It has actually a boat harbor where that connects to San Diego Bay. So it's adjacent.
Talking about Liberty Station?
MCRD. MCRD has MCRD is part of the community plan. You have parts of the community, which is all of MCRD, is in the coastal zone. So when you talk about saying this is not the coastal zone, you have those factors. You have the factor that every zip code that is a coast zip code is adjacent to this. 92107, 92106, 92109 are all adjacent. So you jump over a street and you're in the coastal. What's coast? So the thing is, the reason, and I've talked extensively to Alex Leondis, who was the key person on this, because we had a lawsuit at Naval Training Center, and Mignon Shear was part of our group, and they were adamant about I-5 being the barrier. And again, I'll go back, is that one of the big reasons they include the Midway district was airflow and also temperature. The temperature there is absolutely magnificent year-round. You got people going out to bars.
We're in the middle of a climate crisis, and the temperatures that we have today are not going to stay as they are. But kids, carry on. Okay,
so the temperatures are going up here, but they're going up even worse out in Barstow, where they got all sorts of sports fields. And this is a destination center for everybody to enjoy. And actually, this whole issue is a civil rights issue. It's a social justice issue for all the people living in those tiny apartments in Chula Vista and National City and in San Diego that don't have a backyard. And a lot of them don't even have a balcony. And for them to be able to access any kind of quality of life, they have to go to the coast. And why aren't we talking about these low-income workers who don't have a good park around them, and they rely on the coastal zone? Why aren't we saying, let's increase the capacity of the coast so that they can enjoy themselves?
I think DK's got something to say. Why don't you go? Take it away, DK.
So we can talk about air quality in the city of San Diego briefly. I'd like to keep this conversation on the climate as it is, because we even before COVID, before Measure E, before a lot of this, in the city of San Diego, California, the world, right? We've had a housing crisis, certainly in the San Diego region, for a very long time now. We've had a climate crisis globally, right? So to say that the temperature is going up here, but it's going up more somewhere else, that I don't see what the point of you saying that is. I don't see what point that statement validates. Frankly, San Diego has one of the worst air qualities in the country. We're the 6th worst air quality, air polluted city in the entire country of the United States. When you start talking about what it is that Measure E really does, what it is that mechanism really unlocks, like I said, it enables us to build housing near transit, to develop a vibrant community. When you have housing near transit, you can minimize the amount of vehicle miles traveled, thereby limiting the amount of carbon dioxide that goes out in the air, thereby mitigating our carbon footprint. In the city of San Diego, we have a climate action plan that was passed in 2015 that's being reworked version 2.0 right now, right? And we have a number of very rigid targets regarding this mode shift of getting people out of cars and driving less and walking more, and doing all the things that Midway actually can facilitate, right? Biking, walking, and the types of transit and passive recreation that you're talking about in this mythical 200-acre park. But there's no way that any of that gets developed if Measure E doesn't pass, right? And if you start to look at some of the other components that are sitting around the neighborhood at the moment, we talked briefly about Navwan and some of the major billion-dollar investment that's going on there to overhaul that as a transportation infrastructure, or as a transportation hub, right? Just yesterday, Gavin Newsom signed Todd Gloria's AB 2731, which is a bill that helps streamline that process. Last year, Representative Scott Peters authored the Build More Transit Near Housing Act, which is a different way that we bring in federal funds to develop projects here. So I don't really know what it is that this gentleman is seeking to achieve by attempting to defeat Measure E, but I do know that as a society, as a civilization, we have a number of challenges, and I don't see how we get into a place where we can make any sort of meaningful change if we tie our hands behind our backs and just believe in something that will never come to pass. Stop myself there for now.
John, let's talk about the idea of transit-oriented development. Midway is close to the Old Town Transit Center. It has some bus lines, I believe. The community plan update contemplates adding more pedestrian amenities and bike facilities. It's also close to the downtown job hub. It's close to the freeway access. Why is this the wrong place to be adding new housing when it seems to be like it would actually be a net decrease in vehicle travel?
Well, I want to start with two examples of what happens when you densify too much. Is when COVID hit, two cities were kind of poster childs of what happens when the quality of life deteriorates. The mantra from environmentalists is we have to save the backcountry by stuffing as many people as tight as possible in the cities. And so that's what we are pursuing. But what happened when COVID hit is all of a sudden the quality of life plummeted in New York and in San Francisco. And all those high wage earners that they were relying on, all of a sudden, guess where they went? The backcountry. I have met many people who know of or were moving to the Sierras, specifically because the quality of life in San Francisco absolutely got devastated. And part of it was the whole tech movement. And if you've lived in a techie town, and I lived in the San Jose area for a while, and techies don't really create that vibrant quality of life that you're looking. It's the artists and the we call it the bohemian community that gives it a touch and a flavor. So when you're looking at this particular development and you're looking at what UCSD, there was an article about UCSD saying they want this because it's the trolley you can take from this area up to UCSD, the trolley, and that would make it more appealing for their students who come in for China to have their rich parents buy all these units down there. We're not going to be solving the problem that is being raised by just going into this whole thing is we just got to stuff people down there. And remember that the way the zoning is today, this area without Proposition D is just like Houston. There's no zoning. It's been gutted by all these different
How is there no zoning? The city council just approved a community plan update. It has zoning. You can look at the maps.
But again, it's less than 30-foot height limit. The whole community zone you must throw it away because there is no limit to the amount of high rises you can put in this area.
That's false.
And
that's not an accurate statement.
Why don't you explain why, DK?
Because there is a limit to the height that you can build. Like I said, it's 100 feet. That is what is limited in the zoning by virtue of the community plan, the density that's articulated in the dwelling units per acre. There is a limit. That is a fact. And so for this gentleman to say otherwise is not true.
That is pre-busting the 30-foot height limit. The community plan did not contemplate.
The 30-foot height limit does not change anything that has to do with the number of units that are articulated in the community plan. As of today, the number of units that are allocated in the community plan is fixed. The 30-foot height limit will not change that number of units. What it will change is our capacity to manipulate the configuration of those units. You talk about wanting to have park space and open ground. The only way to actually do that in this community is to build up instead of out, whereby we have more ground available for these amenities. I would love to have a green park down the street. We don't have that. We have parking lots. We have a lot to do when it comes to, like I said, the climate action plan and the manifestation of the goals that are there. And I do not think, and there. I don't understand how you can sit there and make this argument that we're somehow going to be better off if we tie our hands behind our back and avail ourselves of fewer opportunities to actually implement any sort of relevant changes. So that's my comment.
John, I want to ask you about the lawsuit that Save Our Access is filed against the city. Can you just kind of explain your arguments and why you think that a change to the height limit requires an environmental impact report?
Absolutely, because you've just changed the whole name of the game. And, you know, I've been around long enough, and I've been involved in projects, and the big one that I was involved in, the Naval Training Center. The best deal we ever got was before the developer was selected. After the developer was selected, things changed and changed and changed and changed, and everything for the public went away. So this city has no credibility whatsoever with the general public to keep up their end of a bargain. And so this, you know, it's all bait and switch. This is San Diego's mantra for a long time has been bait and switch, or as one city attorney once told me, is okay, we broke the law, so sue us. And they put the onus of the public to keep, you know, the city in line. And this again is that this is a mega development, which we didn't get a community alternative. We were saying you're going to get dense infill, period, and you're going to give away your public land, and that just doesn't resonate.
Where was that said? When was that said?
What?
You just said we were going to give away community land and have dense. When was that? Where was that? Who said that?
Well, you look at the plans for the city sports arena property. You got 48 acres. You got a little 5-acre park. We own all 45.
That's not good enough. I'll agree with you there. I'll agree with you there. That 5-acre park and that 40-acre site is not good enough. We'd like to see much more than that.
And we own the. See, the thing is, that's the thing is the history of San Diego is that things that the public owns disappear over and over again. And it started in Mission Bay Park. Mission Bay Park was a total natural park until the city of San Diego got it. And then they put a bunch of hotels in it. Then you got the convention center, and when the convention center took and bulldozed the park, there was a park there, and the convention center expansion, which exists, it sits on public land. It's not even government land. It's land that is owned by we the people. Spawned all these hotels.
I'm waiting to hear where.
Let me jump in here. So
it's just another domino. That's
John,
all.
Okay. So I did actually want to read a couple of comments from some of our listeners or our viewers. There's one comment from a UCSD student, Max Lister, and he says, as a UCSD student, that comment was extremely ridiculous and hurtful. And I know there would be plenty of UCSD students, many from San Diego and California, that would gladly live in Midway and are in desperate need of more housing options. John, what do you have to say to Max? John, are you there?
I'm here.
Can you respond to Max's comment?
I missed most of it because my screen went bad.
Oh, okay, I'll read it again. So Max Leister is a UCSD student, and he commented, as a UCSD student, that comment, I think he's referring to your comment saying that Chinese foreign exchange or foreign students from China would be living there and their parents would buy them the housing in Midway. So he says, as a UCSD student, that comment was extremely ridiculous and hurtful. And I know that there would be plenty of UCSD students, many from San Diego and California, that would gladly live in the Midway district and are in desperate need of more housing options. So what do you have to say to Max?
I mean, I just read the article. I'm just quoting what I read, is that when you're looking at what's going to be built down there, the greatest comparable is Bosa development. The average cost of a unit there is 1.5 in all the downtown towers, and this area is slated for as many high rises like Bosa as possible. There's no way a UCSD student is going to be able to. And I'll give you another example. Is let's go down to the old Bernard Elementary School site.
I'd like to respond to Max.
John, I'm sorry to interrupt. We've only got 5 minutes left, and I know there's another question from a viewer that I wanted to give DK a chance to respond to. And this is from Thomas Schlegel, and he says, what keeps the high rises affordable if the limit is removed? Is the community plan powerful enough to keep the city council from voting to increase the zone density? I think the question is, what would stop the city council from changing the community plan?
Yeah, I mean, I can see this question too here on the screen, but part of what I think is maybe in need of clarification is that we're not talking about high rises to begin with. The city of San Diego has an existing, what they call inclusionary housing ordinance, which is the percentage of any given development that must be deed restricted affordable. I think it's 18% is what was voted on this past year. Correct me if I'm wrong.
10%. 10%, and then they lowered the income threshold. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, that was a process, and I know it was sort of argued back and forth. So at present, 10% is mandated, right, by law. One thing that I know that the community planning group, the body that I serve on, what we are looking for in our community, like I said, is the highest possible concentration of affordable and market rate affordable. So deed restricted affordable and market rate affordable housing. To answer the question specifically, can the city council increase density? No, the way that happens is by a new community plan update at some other point in the future. And that's a process that involves not just the community planning group, but the planning department and all kinds of other entities at the city. It's not a single effort that the city council would be able to enact overnight.
There's a question from Stephanie Hernandez, and I think I might be able to answer this actually. So she asks, who will be responsible or made accountable to build affordable housing if the height limit is lifted? So affordable housing is built in the private sector generally. And so, the city is responsible for creating enough zoned capacity or allowing the regulations to create the opportunities for private sector developers to build that affordable housing. Who would be responsible if it doesn't actually get built? The city has certain requirements, and if to build, allow affordable housing to be built, and if they aren't met, then there's a state law that allows developers to basically bypass some city regulations and build housing by right if it fits with the underlying zoning. And let's see, there's one question from Will Collin Diamond. Is EB5 even a concern? I'm not sure what Will means there.
Yeah.
AB5 perhaps was the intent, but I don't know. I think this is supposed to wrap up at 6:55, but I'd like to give each of you perhaps a comment or a few minutes to just give some closing. Oh, I'm being told we get an extra 5 minutes. Well, 5 minutes isn't a whole lot of time. So why doesn't each of you maybe make some closing remarks? Again, this is, the question is, should the city allow buildings taller than 30 feet in the Midway district? DK started first, so John, why don't we go to you?
The big thing is the public has rights that are extraordinarily valuable to developers. And they have land that is extraordinarily valuable to developers. Lifting the height limit eliminates all leverage that the public has in the development of their land and this area. This is not an issue of the Midway community. This is a destination place where people flood in from all over Southern California, and they come in from Arizona specifically to beat the heat and to enjoy San Diego's marvelous coastal lifestyle. To say, let's just tear out the linchpin or the place that links the two bays and go a different direction makes no sense to the greater public at large. A much better option is for us to start thinking of the way the San Franciscans did when they created Golden Gate National Rec Area. the Golden Gate National Rec Area as a model that would create a brilliant future for San Diego, an exciting one, and it would create civic pride. To just stuff a whole bunch of people down here has no intrinsic value to everybody else living here. You know, it's not going to solve the climate crisis, and it's going to, and instead may even make it worse, because as you destroy the quality of life in a city, people get up and they move out.
All right, DK, closing remarks?
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're here to talk about the impact of Measure E, right? And from the very beginning, what we've said is that Measure E really is a catalyst. You know, it's a mechanism that will enable us to help ourselves be our best selves, right? To imply that Measure E is not about the Midway community, I think is not just factually inaccurate, it's somewhat offensive, right? When the conversation first started at the community planning group about the redevelopment of the sports arena, the city's original intent was to only have the 30-foot height limit adjusted for the land that it owns. Those 88 acres up and down Sports Arena Boulevard. And it was actually through collaboration with our council office that our community planning group was able to make the city understand where we, the people of this community, would like to see our community go. What we did as a community planning group and as a body was push back, not aggressively, but aggressively enough to, like I said, make our points known. I think, Angie, you might have actually been at that meeting of the community planning group at Bay City Brewing when Jennifer Campbell came and said, okay, we're gonna go for the entire community. This entire process has been a public process. This entire effort has been something that, like I said, not just me and not just the folks who are on my board, but my neighbors, my barber, my dentist, everyone who I engage with in Midway has been looking for it for a very long time. When Prop D was voted in 1972, the youngest possible person who could have voted yes on Prop D was 18 in 1972. I think that puts them somewhere in their mid to late 60s now. And what we're talking about, like I said, is not just the state of affairs here today in Midway, where, frankly, this is not a destination. I don't know if you come down here very often, John, but like I said, I live here. I walk these streets. I'm here all day, every day, particularly these last 6 months. It's hard enough for me to get my friends to come over, right? I'm embarrassed oftentimes when my parents come by, because what they have to see when they come out the freeway is a strip club, and then another strip club, and another strip club, then a strip mall, right? The Midway community area is blighted. It's in desperate need of help. It's in desperate need of revitalization. And that is the entire intent and purpose of Measure E, is to avail ourselves of the opportunity that we have as a community to make our community better, right? When that's just on its own. When you then factor in, like I said, the sort of existing infrastructure that we have around us, the Old Town Transit Center that's there now, the investment that's going in at Navwan, the redevelopment of the sports arena in and of itself, the way that we generate revenue as a city comes from two primary big sources, right? Sales tax, property tax, and then also tourism and all the dollars that are associated with the tourism industry. Obviously, COVID has decimated our tourism industry. At some point, we'll get back to where we were. But what Measure E does is it enables us, like I said, to not just revitalize our community, but in doing so, give ourselves the tools. Inside the community plan update, there's something called an enhanced infrastructure financing district. But basically, what I'm saying is that Measure E gives us options, right? I see you're telling me to wrap up, so I'll just cut to the chase. Measure E gives us options, right? And that's what we need. We need to be able to look further into the future than just the next week or two, or month or two, or year or two, and give ourselves the ability to plan for a better San Diego.
Well, I'm afraid we're out of time now. So thank you so much to John McNab and Dike Anyiwo for arguing both sides of this issue. Thank you to everyone who's watching. And it sounds like we're going to bring back Mackenzie Elmer to close out our panel this evening.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us, and you can find your next session on the event site. And if you get lost, head back to politifest.org. Thanks very much, everyone. Good discussion.
Thank you.